plan, which will inevitably lead to ending the Russian aggression, is strengthening Ukraine's defense capabilities of Ukraine and Europe, reliably protecting Ukraine's skies, and safeguarding critical infrastructure. Therefore, your consolidated and unconditional support for Ukraine as a victim of aggression, dear friends, is an important, if not the key element of a peace plan. We need to move forward in the process of finalizing and providing Ukraine with reliable security guarantees from recognized world democracies, the United Europe and the United States of America. On the other hand, we must maximize sanctions pressure on Russia until Putin is ready to conclude peace. And it would be just to use Russia's frozen assets, because this is the price for aggression and the price for the lives taken and the price for the destruction inflicted. We sincerely believe that on the 18th, 19th of December, the Council of the European Union will adopt fair decisions on this matter. Besides, Ukraine's membership in the European Union and NATO must also be elements of both Ukraine's security guarantees and the peace plan. Only under these conditions will Russia retreat, because it will finally understand that it cannot overcome and seize Ukraine as an integrated part of the democratic world. That Ukraine, once and for all, has become part of the world where there is no place for tyranny and where democracy prevails. We sincerely believe that the consolidated strength of our partners can truly bring this peace that we all long for closer to us. And dear friends, we have no right to waste this chance. So I ask each and every one of you to use your own capabilities while working with our partners, the US administration and Congress, the European Parliament, and parliaments of other countries of the world to achieve this result. Dear friends, a decisive moment in our struggle is approaching. The struggle for Ukraine, the struggle for Europe, the struggle for a lasting and just peace. We are under enormous pressure from the enemy, from its deceitful propaganda, under the enormous pressure of fatigue and losses. But friends, let's be honest. There's another pressure that does not allow us to surrender to the enemy's mercy and cease fighting. And this pressure is far greater, because this is the pressure of our own conscience. It is the pressure of the memory of all our victims and all our suffering. It is the pressure of responsibility, joint responsibility for the future, and it is the pressure of our dignity. And this pressure will not allow us to retreat. So thank you for your attention, and glory to Ukraine.
Distinguished guests, dear friends, allow me to welcome our next speakers to lecture, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Sweden, Ms. Maria Malmer Stenegard. Dear Madam Minister, the floor is yours.
Honorable speakers, excellencies, distinguished guests, it is an honor to address this summit. First, let me just say a few words about the intense diplomacy that we've seen in the last couple of days. Ukraine has always shown that it is serious about achieving a just and lasting peace. Russia has not. Ukraine has offered full, unconditional ceasefire. Russia has not. Ukraine has always been ready to negotiate. Russia has not. Since Russia has not changed its position, neither has Sweden nor the EU. Our position remains that to achieve a just and lasting peace, borders cannot be changed by force. There cannot be limitations on Ukraine's armed forces that will invite further Russian aggression. And there cannot be any limitations on the full sovereign right of the Ukrainian people to choose their own path, which includes the path to EU membership. An agreement that includes those main elements, that truly respects Ukraine's sovereignty and that has the support of its people, such an agreement will also have our support. But as long as the Russian aggression continues, Sweden has a clear two-point plan to strengthen Ukraine and weaken Russia. You can count on our support. Let me also acknowledge that World Children's Day took place last week. That made me think of the many thousands of Ukrainian children that Russia has forcibly taken away from their homes. That maybe made me think of Sashko from Mariupol, who was separated from his mother, never to see her again. That made me think of Yevhen, a father who was detained while his children were sent to Moscow boarding facility. As a mother, I cannot even begin to imagine the horror of taking children away from their homes, putting them into camps, and indoctrinating them. We cannot bring back the children who have already lost their lives in the war, but we can and we must do even more to bring all the deported Ukrainian children home. This summit also allows us to once again establish some basic facts. Crimea is Ukraine, Donetsk is Ukraine, Luhansk is Ukraine, Kherson is Ukraine, and Zaporizhzhia is Ukraine. And let me be clear, Sweden will not recognize Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea or any other part of Ukraine's territory. We will not reward aggression. We owe this to the Ukrainian people, especially those in the temporarily occupied territories. We owe this to the women and the men who bravely fight for their freedom and for ours. We owe this to every person in Ukraine and beyond who believes in a world governed by rules rather than force. What we know about life under Russian occupation also shows why our support for free and independent Ukraine must continue. Because in the occupied territories, journalists are silenced, families are separated, children grow up under relentless propaganda. Crimean Tatars face harassment and imprisonment for speaking their language or for practicing their faith. Intimidation, fear, repression, this is life in the occupied territories. Russia's war of aggression causes immense human suffering. Those responsible must be held to account to secure justice for the victims and to deter potential perpetrators in the future. Since 2014, Sweden supports investigations and the documentation of suspected war crimes in Ukraine. We commend the work done by Ukrainian authorities and international mechanisms, including the International Criminal Court, the UN, the OSCE, and civil society organizations. Their efforts are crucial to end impunity. This year, we have seen important landmarks for accountability. In November, a court in Ukraine convicted a Russian soldier for murder and sentenced him to life imprisonment in Ukraine. This was the first ruling of its kind since Russia began its full-scale invasion. The Swedish government also strongly welcomes the progress that has been made towards establishing a special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine and a claims commission for reparations. They must now begin their work as soon as possible. As Russia's brutal war of aggression enters its fourth winter, I'm urging international partners to help strengthen Ukraine by providing substantial military and civilian support. Last week at the EU Foreign Affairs Council in Brussels, I showed my colleagues a simple graph that showed how the EU's support to Ukraine is still smaller than the collective purchase of Russian oil and gas since the full-scale invasion. This is nothing but a disgrace. This needs to change now. The best way to fund Ukraine's needs now is to move forward with the reparations loan. As the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, said in her State of the Union speech earlier this year, and I quote, "This is Russia's war, and Russia should be the one to pay," end quote. Once again, let me assure you, Sweden will continue to stand with Ukraine, with those who uphold international law, and with those who seek a just and lasting peace. Thank you, and Slava Ukraini.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister, for your contribution and for setting a constructive tone for our discussions today. Distinguished delegates, I now have the honor of opening the plenary session of the 4th Parliamentary Summit of the International Crimea Platform. Before welcoming our next speaker, let me start with a few housekeeping remarks to guide us through today's session. Our session will run until 11 o'clock, when we will take a 30-minute coffee break. We will reconvene at 11:30 and continue until 14:15, a quarter past 2, when we will conclude the session with the adoption of a joint statement. The final version of the statement will be distributed during the plenary session. We are delighted to have a substantial list of speakers today. Accordingly, I kindly remind all delegates that speaking time is limited to 3 minutes. And in Sweden, 3 minutes means 3 minutes. That is 180 seconds. I know that in some countries, 3 minutes might mean more, but it does not in Sweden. The order of speakers has been distributed to you. Please note that changes to the list are not possible at this stage. Some speakers have requested to speak earlier in the program due to early departures. We have accommodated this, so there are a few exceptions to the alphabetical speaking order. All statements are made from the lectern, where the microphone is automatically activated when you are given the floor. To ensure that the program runs smoothly, a designated seat has been reserved in the front row for the next speaker. If you are scheduled to speak next, please proceed to this seat. And it is just over there. Our first speaker will be the host of the first Parliamentary Summit, Mr. Gordan Jandrokovic, the Speaker of the Croatian Sabor. Mr. Jandrokovic will be followed by Jiri Drahos from the Czech Republic. Please, Mr. Jandrokovic, the floor is yours.
Dear Andreas, dear Ruslan, Madam Minister, esteemed colleagues. 3 years ago in Zagreb, at the first Parliamentary Summit of the International Crimea Platform, we stood together in affirming Ukraine's sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity, in condemning Russian aggression in the strongest terms. We did the same in Prague and Riga. Today, I thank the Swedish Riksdag and the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine for gathering us here to reaffirm our dedication to these principles. To stand resolutely for international law so heavily violated by Russia in Ukraine, by suppression, terror and destruction, by temporary occupation and then illegal annexation. The idea that borders can be changed by force is extremely dangerous. It implies a vision of a world where the power of rules yields before the rule of power. To oppose this and to defend the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity is not only our duty. At a critical juncture, it is essential for global security. All the more reason to follow, with extreme attention, the talks regarding the latest US proposal for ending the war. Strong pressure on Russia needs to be maintained and increased. because Ukraine's approach has been nothing but cooperative and constructive. Comments just made by Chairman Stefanchuk and President Zelensky confirm that our undiminished support is as necessary as ever. Dear colleagues, from day one, Russian aggression has also been an attack on the sovereign right of every state to choose its own political path. In Croatia, we really understand the cost of defending a nation's political choices and of facing an aggressor which refuses to accept them. That, too, is why we have stood with Ukraine from the very start, with any means of support that we could provide, political, financial, humanitarian, or military. On top of that, we have shared the highly specific expertise from our own war experience on demining, war crimes, prosecution, veterans' care, and peaceful reintegration. Finally, I believe that our common values are defended in Ukraine today. So supporting Ukraine also means protecting these values and investing into a safer and more predictable future for all of us. Therefore, it is absolutely vital that we remain firmly behind them to advocate their rightful claims, to keep their needs high on our agendas, to have their best interest in our minds and in our hearts. Thank you, and God bless the brave people of Ukraine. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Mr. Jandrokovic. I now warmly welcome Mr. Yuri Dragoš, the first Vice President of the Senate of the Parliament of the Czech Republic that hosted the second parliamentary summit. Mr. Dragoš will be followed by Ms. Daiga Mireni.
Dear Andreas, dear Ruslan, dear ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to be part of the fourth Crimea Platform Parliamentary Summit and to represent the Senate of the Parliament of the Czech Republic here. It has been more than 3.5 years since the start of the full-scale and unprovoked Russian invasion of Ukraine, a conflict that has claimed thousands of lives and in which Russia commits war crimes every day, for which I believe it will one day bear full criminal responsibility. In reaction, some European and non-European politicians argue that peace must be achieved at any cost, including handing Crimea over to Vladimir Putin, who will then, presumably, start behaving himself again. Nothing could be farther from the truth. We Czechs have historical experience with such dictators. When Neville Chamberlain returned from the Munich conference in 1938, he brought the British a supposed peace for our time. However, Nazi Germany was not satisfied with gaining the Sudetenland, and after occupying the rest of Czechoslovakia, the worst conflict in modern history broke out within a year. Let us therefore not fall for the Chamberlains of today. There can be no peace that the Ukrainians themselves do not want and negotiate. Until then, it's our moral imperative to support this heroic nation to the best of our individual countries' abilities and within the European Union as a whole. Whether this means humanitarian aid to suffering civilians, material support for Ukrainian infrastructure, or, of course, supplies of military equipment. In this regard, we in the Czech Senate will do our utmost to preserve the excellent Czech ammunition initiative. All of this will hopefully contribute to us passing the test of history, a test which our predecessors failed miserably when faced with the threat of Hitler. At that time, they had a choice between shame and war. They chose shame and got war. Let us not repeat the same mistake with another bloody dictator. As our first president, Václav Havel, once said, indifference to others and indifference to the fate of the whole is precisely what opens the door to evil. Thank you and Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Mr. Dragos. Our next speaker is the Speaker of Sejm of Latvia, Ms. Daiga Mirenie. Her intervention will be followed by a video statement.
Ļoti cienījamais Ruslan, ļoti cienījamais Andreas. Visam drīz būs pagājuši 12 gadi kopš Krimas nelikumīgās okupācijas, bet nākamā gada februārī apritēs 4 gadi kopš mēs katrs kļuvām par lieciniekiem brutālam agresora valsts pilna mēroga iebrukumam Ukrainā. Katra Eiropas politiķa pienākums šodien ir nerimstoši turpināt atgādināt par Krimas nelikumīgo okupāciju. Šodien katrs no mums var būt Krimas balss, turpinot izgaismot cilvēktiesību pārkāpumus, nelikumīgās deportācijas.
Please use the channel extra.
Piespiedu izmaiņas Krimas iedzīvotāju struktūrā un represijas pret Krimas tatāriem. Katrs no mums ir liecinieks nerimstošai vardarbībai un Krimas pussalas militarizācijai. Baltijas valstis padomju okupācijā pavadīja 50 smagus gadus. Tika pielietoti visi instrumenti, lai mēs zaudētu savu valodu, kultūru un identitāti. Padomju okupācijas sekas turpinājām izjust arī šodien. Divvalodība, etniskais naids, dezinformācija un hibrīdkara elementi. Mēs Baltijas valstis ļoti labi apzināmies, cik neparedzamas un bīstams spēj būt agresors. Nemainās arī viņa metodes, tāpēc mēs turpināsim uzstājīgi atgādināt, kā Eiropai, tā arī visai pasaulei, Krievija ir nemainīgs apdraudējums mums visiem. Kam vēl būtu jānotiek, lai mēs Eiropā pilnībā apzinātos situācijas nopietnību? Šis ir brīdis, kur mums īpaši Eiropas parlamentu līderiem ir jāspēj darīt vairāk. Nepieciešams mobilizēt nacionālos parlamentus un valdības, lai atbalsts Ukrainai būtu lielāks un piespiestu agresoru sēsties pie sarunu galda. Ukrainā ikdienas dzīvību zaudē nevainīgi cilvēki. Gan kaujas laukā, gan arī aizstāvot un stiprinot demokrātiju. Mēs Eiropā vēl joprojām varam darīt vairāk, un vēl līdz galam mēs neesam izdarījuši arī savu mājas darbu. Krievijas iesaldētie
Russia's frozen assets are yet to be channeled into direct support for Ukraine. At the same time, trade with the aggressor state is continuing, and there are still industries and areas where sanctions can be stepped up. And dear colleagues, we need to use all international legal instruments to ensure that Russia and its officials are held accountable for the crimes perpetrated against the people of Ukraine and especially its children. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Ms. Mirenie. Dear colleagues, we will now see a video message by Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House of Representatives, the United States. Please look on the screen.
Good afternoon. This is Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson from Washington. I really wish I could be in Stockholm with you this week, and I'm so grateful to my dear friends, Speaker Andreas Norlén, Speaker Ruslan Stefanchuk, for inviting me to briefly address you today. I was fortunate to visit with my friend Speaker Stefanchuk most recently at the G7 Speakers Summit this fall in Ottawa. And I'd love to see each of you next time you come to Washington, D.C. I'm a little biased, but the view from my speaker's balcony down the National Mall is the best in town, and I'd love to have you come by. I'm really grateful that 60 parliamentary delegations have gathered to discuss such a topic important as this. Russia's flagrant and devastating attacks on the innocent people of Ukraine are unacceptable, and the principles of territorial integrity and state sovereignty are not up for debate. We're thankful to our allies in Europe, but also across the world, for stepping up their support to Ukraine, including tougher sanctions on Moscow and strengthening energy security through American LNG to free Europe from Russian leverage. Despite the vast physical distance between the U.S. and Ukraine, the Ukrainian people's fight for freedom and survival inspires us all. As a Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, We will continue to work together with President Trump, Republican and Democrat leaders in our Congress, and our European allies to help restore peace and prosperity for the Ukrainian people. After ending conflicts across the globe, from the Middle East to the Indo-Pacific to Africa, President Trump has demonstrated that he is determined to end wars and stop the needless bloodshed. We understand that peace cannot be achieved through weakness. Peace is secured through strength. And it is this principle that guides the new American foreign policy under President Trump's leadership. And we're prayerful that these international efforts will bring about a just and lasting peace for our friends in Ukraine. Again, I lament that I cannot join you this weekend in Stockholm in person, but I wish you a productive and fruitful discussion, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to address you. God bless you all.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Muchísimas gracias, señor presidente. Y ahora vamos a continuar. De acuerdo a la lista, tengo aquí apuntado al señor Vincent Blondel, presidente del Senado belga. Y lo seguirá después la señora Raya Nazarian.
Honored speakers of the
Estimados presidentes, estimados invitados, señor presidente, excelencia, distinguidos indicados. Hace 7 meses atrás yo estaba en Kiev con varios de ustedes, incluyendo también Andreas Norlén y el señor Stefanchuk. Y ahí pudimos evidenciar cuáles fueron las atrocidades que se cometieron en Bucha. Y ciertamente lo que vimos ahí quedó grabado en nuestras mentes. Yo dejé Kiev mucho más convencido que nunca que este tipo de crímenes no puede quedar impune. Hace pocos días atrás, la ciudad de Ternopil también sufrió un ataque violento y en nombre del Senado belga ciertamente expreso nuestra solidaridad incondicional y también les hago llegar nuestros sentimientos más queridos a toda la gente de la región que está defendiendo su patria. También nos acordamos de los desplazados y aquellos que perdieron todo. La agresión rusa contra Ucrania es algo más que un desafío geopolítico. Es un desafío muy profundo que toca la seguridad europea. También toca sanciones colectivas y valores compartidos. Crimea también es una parte integral de Ucrania y condenamos fehacientemente a Rusia que intentó
territory which violates the UN Charter. We condemn the horrific use of torture, inhumane treatment and abduction. Accountability is essential. We will continue to support international investigation of war crimes. Russia must be held responsible and pay for the devastation it caused. And let us be clear, Ukraine must be at the very center of all peace effort. Any discussion concerning its future must be conducted with the Ukrainian people to lay the foundation of a just and lasting peace. Dear colleagues, let me conclude with a more personal note. 30 years ago, I became engaged here in Stockholm to the woman who is still my wife today. It happened on the Riksbron bridge, just outside this Riksdag building, a memory that remains very dear to me. I hope to be able to return to this same bridge very soon, once Ukraine has regained its full sovereignty in a world that respects the international order. Today, let us reaffirm our commitment to working together to safeguard the rule-based international order. Let us advance with unity and determination towards the establishment of a comprehensive, just and lasting peace for Ukraine and for the world. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Our next speaker is Ms. Raya Nazarian, Speaker of the Bulgarian National Assembly. After her remarks, we will hear from Mr. Lauri Huzar. Please, Ms. Nazarian, the floor is yours. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, We are now in the 4th year of Russia's illegal, unjust, and unprovoked military aggression against Ukraine. We will not forget and will always repeat, this war did not start on the 24th of February 2022, but with Kremlin's annexation of Crimea in 2014. Russia's illegal occupation and annexation of parts of sovereign Ukrainian lands is a violation of international law. Their Ukrainian territories and their return is a matter not only of rule of law and international legal principles, but of justice too. Bulgaria has been and will be a reliable and active partner in the international Crimea Platform since it was founded in 2021. We participate in the parliamentary sessions and contribute to the initiatives for the security of the Black Sea region, including the forum we held in Sofia in 2024 that brought together delegations from 42 states and 8 international organizations. In the context of developments in the past few days, I would like to welcome the renewed effort of our partners in the US and President Trump to seek a way to stop the military actions in Ukraine. The 28-point plan has elements of fundamental importance for achieving lasting and just peace. However, the proposals should be discussed in coordination with all European partners because the conditions of a future peace agreement have a direct impact on the security not only of Ukraine, but also of Bulgaria, the European Union, and Europe as a whole. The Republic of Bulgaria confirms its commitment to work hard within the EU and NATO with our American partners in order to guarantee, together with Ukraine, that any agreement will be sustainable, will be implemented in good faith, and that Ukraine will have security guarantees. Ukrainian people have the sovereign right to define their own future and to decide on the nature of any proposed peace agreement. Dear colleagues, our common goal is a peaceful and sustainable development of the region. Recovery is no longer a future ambition, but a present need. The European path of Ukraine is a choice that is in line with the interest of both the Ukrainian people and the European Union. A stable, independent, and democratic Ukraine is an important factor for the security and prosperity of our continent. In conclusion, please let me send a message to the people of Ukraine once again. You are not alone in these difficult times. Bulgaria stands by you in trials, in striving for peace, and in hope for a future of freedom, dignity, and security. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I now invite Mr. Lauri Huszar, President of Estonia, Riigikogu, to deliver his remarks. You have 3 minutes. Next will be Mr. Marcos Perestrello. Please proceed, Mr. Huszar.
Distinguished colleagues, dear Ruslan, dear Andreas, allow me to begin by expressing my deep gratitude for bringing us together today. The Crimean Platform is not merely an event. It is a testimony to our shared commitment to freedom, to peace, and to human dignity. At this moment in history, our decision bears consequences not only for Ukraine, but for the very fate of all Europeans. Ukraine has continuously shown that it is serious about peace, and President Zelensky remains ready to negotiate. It is crucial that Europe, Ukraine, and the United States work together with the goal of a just and lasting peace. A peace grounded in international law and fully respecting Ukraine's sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. Peace cannot be attained by appeasements. History tells us that bowing to aggression does not quiet the storm. It invites the next and even bigger one. Dear colleagues, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine, and nothing about Europe without Europe. Russia's demands must not be legitimized and under any circumstances. Europe will never recognize claims that extend Russia's influence beyond its borders, and talks must begin with an immediate ceasefire. Any agreement must focus on ending the war, securing Ukraine's future, and providing credible security guarantees backed by the real forces. Ukraine must retain the right to choose its own path, whether towards the European Union or NATO. There must be no impunity for crimes committed. The deported children of Ukraine must be returned home. The aggressor must pay. Frozen Russian assets must become a real instrument of Ukraine's defense, justice and reconstruction. In the European Union alone, these assets exceed 200 billion euros. Let's start using them. Dear colleagues, Russia's war of aggression and the peace that follows will shape Europe's security architecture for generations to come. Let Europe stand united and resolute, ensuring that peace honors Ukraine's courage and rests upon justice, law and lasting security. If territories can be gained and borders changed by force, no one is secure. To prevent such a future, we must continue and strengthen our steadfast support for Ukraine and firm pressure on Russia. And let me be completely honest with you, Russia never changes. Dear friends, together, through principled pressure and unwavering solidarity, we stand firmly with Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you. I now give the floor to Mr. Marcos Prestrello, President of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly and Deputy Speaker of the Portuguese Assembleia. After his remarks, we will hear from Mr. Jussi Halla-aho.
Mr. Speaker, Excellencies, on behalf of both the Portuguese Parliament and the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, let me express my gratitude to the Swedish Parliament for the invitation and for hosting this summit. Portugal has long stood with Ukraine, and in the Portuguese Parliament, cross-party majorities have consistently reaffirmed Ukraine's sovereignty and condemned Russia's aggression. We've been active in bringing Ukraine's case to partners across the global south, underlining the universal principles at stake: rule of law, multilateralism, sovereignty, territorial integrity, respect for human rights. These are not only European concerns, but also the very foundation of the international order. Excellencies, in the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, representatives from all 32 national parliaments of NATO members have stood shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine since the very beginning of Russia's aggression. We were one of the first international institutions to expel the Russian delegation after the illegal annexation of Crimea in 2014. And since the full-scale invasion in 2022, we have not only reaffirmed our support, we have doubled down, including by creating a special fund to support the Verkhovna Rada participation in the NATO BA. We are following closely the ongoing discussion around the possible ceasefire and political settlement. This is the occasion to reiterate that our Assembly fully supports efforts to achieve a just and lasting peace, one that ensures a free, sovereign, and prosperous future for Ukraine, that guarantees Ukraine's and Europe's long-term security, and that does not reward aggression but deters it. This is only possible if negotiations are carried out with the maximum participation of Ukraine. Nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. The outcome of any negotiations on Ukraine will set a precedent with global repercussions. We can have no illusions. Russia is and will remain a threat to NATO and Euro-Atlantic security. Any potential political settlement must lead to an end of its pattern of aggressive behavior. The NATO PA supports peace through strength. The best way to get to peace tomorrow is to support Ukraine's defense today. A capable Ukraine army is a precondition to deterring future aggression, along with solid security guarantees that we need to provide. This is why the NATO Parliamentary Assembly has strongly urged allies to step up defense spending and to ramp up military support, including through Pearl. Mr. Speaker of the Verkhovna Rada, let me conclude by expressing the NATO PA recognition of your leadership during these critical years and let you know that both Portugal and the NATO PA stand with you now at this crucial moment and for the long term as you defend freedom and rebuild your country as a strong, secure and fully integrated member of the Euro-Atlantic family. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Jussi Halla-aho, Speaker of the Eduskunta of Finland. Afterwards, we will hear from Ms. Julia Klöckner. The floor is yours, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker Norlén, Speaker Stefanchuk, esteemed colleagues. Over the past nearly 4 years, we have convened many times in different formats to express our political support to Ukraine. What has changed since the last meeting of the Crimea Platform is, of course, the US administration and its approach to the Russian aggression. This is very unfortunate, not only for the defense of Ukraine and the security of Europe, but also for the US itself and its own strategic interests. Let us hope Mr. Trump and his team understand clearly the true nature of Mr. Putin's regime and its goals and draw appropriate conclusions. But what the Americans do is not really in our hands, and we should not focus too much on it. We should worry about our own ability and willingness to act appropriately. After 4 years of meetings and summits, European countries are still buying Russian oil and fertilizers. We have still not confiscated the frozen Russian assets in our banks. Most countries are still not doing their fair share in supporting Ukraine with military material. Russia poses a long-term strategic threat to Europe as a whole and to the entire world order. If Russia is not stopped in Ukraine, it will only become more dangerous for everyone else. A Russian success in Ukraine would also send a very dangerous message to every other rogue state in the world that aggression is rewarded. Therefore, big talk is not enough. We need bigger contributions, especially from big and wealthy countries, and also from those countries that are further away from Russian borders. We often say that the Ukrainians are fighting for all of us. If we really think so, then all of us should act accordingly and make helping the Ukrainians our highest priority. If we wish to be taken seriously by the Russians and the Americans, we must take more responsibility and make ourselves more relevant. Thank you, Speaker Norlén. Thank you, Mr. Stefanchuk.
Thank you. I now invite Ms. Julia Klöckner, President of the German Bundestag. Her intervention will be followed by 2 video statements.
Thank you, dear Andreas and dear Ruslan, Excellencies. Good to be here together. As we met here in Stockholm, Ukraine is enduring another winter of war. Russian drones strike cities almost every night and families take shelter. The country is fighting for its very survival and for principles that define us all: international law, freedom, democracy. The moral case has rarely been clearer. Yet we must acknowledge openly that unity within Europe has been tested. Some governments have questioned or slowed down decisions or sanctions, arms supplies or joint EU action. Others have signaled a shift in political tone. These steps send a message far beyond Europe, and they are not a helpful one, I would say. Only moments ago, Speaker Mike Johnson underlined that territorial integrity and state sovereignty are not up for debate. We will judge every peace proposal by whether it truly protects Ukraine's sovereignty and freedom. Europe will not waver and will continue its support for Ukraine unabated. The vast majority of our states stand together, and those who have taken a different course still belong to this European community of responsibility. We want them back at the table of consensus because we need all of us. But let me clear, Germany too tried to appease Russia for far too long. This experience shapes my conviction today. Illusions about the nature of this war are dangerous. They weaken Ukraine and they weaken us. Our task now is not to divide Europe, but to strengthen its unity. We thank that to every soldier defending freedom. We thank this to every mother protecting her children from Russian missile strikes. We thank this to brave people of Ukraine and to the future of Europe. Long live the Ukraine.
Thank you. We will now hear messages from Mr. Milton Dick, Speaker of the Australian House of Representatives, and Ms. Sue Lines, President of the Australian Senate. Their messages will be followed by Mr. Manfred Kaufmann.
Australia strongly supports Ukraine's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the right to defend itself against Russia's unprovoked, illegal and immoral invasion. Russia's attempted annexation of Crimea since 2014 and now its full-scale invasion of Ukraine shows Russia's total disregard for international law and the UN Charter. Russia must immediately, completely and unconditionally withdraw its forces from within the international recognised borders of Ukraine, including the Crimean Peninsula. Australia and Ukraine will continue to stand shoulder to shoulder. We believe that all countries are better off in a world where international rules are clear, mutually agreed and consistently followed. Russia's aggression has serious implications for security in both the Euro-Atlantic and our own region here in the Indo-Pacific. I want to thank Sweden for hosting the 4th Parliamentary Summit on the Crimea Platform. Today's summit in Stockholm sends a strong signal of support to Ukraine and defiance to Russia. The international community reaffirms our duty to uphold the fundamental rights of sovereignty and territorial integrity. Australia has proudly committed over $1.3 billion of military, energy and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine since Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022. We are proud to be the largest non-NATO contributor of military support to Ukraine, and Australia has imposed over 1,600 targeted financial sanctions on persons and entities who support Russia's war. We've also implemented the G7 price caps on Russian oil and refined petroleum products, and we've imposed trade bans that have contributed to the reduction of our two-way trade with Russia to negligible levels. Australia will continue working with partners to press Russia for a just and lasting peace in Ukraine and security and stability across Europe. And we must demonstrate that in the face of unprovoked aggression, the international community will band together to ensure the cost of violence always is outweighed by the benefits of peace. This is our duty. Thank you, and slava Ukraine.
Distinguished delegates and esteemed colleagues, as President of the Senate of the Commonwealth of Australia, it is my great honour to address the 4th Parliamentary Summit of the International Crimea Platform. Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine is not only an assault on one nation's territorial integrity, but also an assault on the very foundations of the international order. Australia condemns Russia's unprovoked, illegal and immoral invasion of Ukraine. And 3 years on, we mourn Ukraine's losses and we stand unwavering in our support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Russia must immediately, completely and unconditionally withdraw its troops from within the internationally recognised borders of Ukraine, including the Crimean Peninsula. Our response as parliamentarians must be steadfast. Words are not enough. Australia stands with Ukraine and will continue to provide strong and steadfast support for as long as it takes. We have contributed important defence, economic, energy and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine. Australia's support to date totals more than $1.5 billion. We are proud to be the largest non-NATO contributor of military assistance to Ukraine. The Crimea Platform has become an important forum for voicing collective efforts to hold Russia to account for its occupation of Crimea. This platform reminds us that parliaments are more than institutions of governance. We are custodians of conscience. We give democratic legitimacy to action, and we ensure that solidarity is not seasonal. The struggle of the Ukraine people is not theirs alone. It is a defence of the principle that might does not make right. We must continue to pressure those who enable aggression, to strengthen support for Ukraine's reconstruction, and to champion accountability through international courts. Above all, we must preserve hope, the hope of a free, democratic and peaceful Ukraine. Australia may be geographically distant, but our values are deeply aligned. When the rule of law is under attack anywhere, it is under attack everywhere. The outcome of this war will shape the kind of world our parliaments inherit, one ruled by law or one ruled by fear. Let this summit reaffirm our collective resolve. Russia's aggression will not stand. Ukraine's sovereignty will be restored, and together, through unity and principle, we will ensure that justice prevails. Thank you.
We thank our colleagues in Australia for their messages. And I now invite Mr. Manfred Kaufmann, President of the Landtag of Liechtenstein, to the lectern. Afterwards, we will hear from Ms. Maja-Rienecker. Please, Mr. Speaker, the 3 minutes are yours.
Honourable speakers, excellencies, dear guests. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Ukraine and Sweden for convening the 4th Parliamentary Summit of the International Crimea Platform, which is taking place at a crucial moment for Ukraine. Unfortunately, the unjustified aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine is still ongoing. Russia continues to commit grave violations of international law on a massive scale, particularly targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure. This is absolutely unacceptable. Excellencies, I would like to use this opportunity to reaffirm Liechtenstein's unwavering support for Ukraine, both politically and in humanitarian matters. Furthermore, Liechtenstein has autonomously implemented all EU sanctions against Russia and Belarus in response to the illegal war of aggression against Ukraine. Liechtenstein has consistently condemned the illegal annexation of Crimea and other unlawful occupied regions of Ukraine. These annexations are contrary to international law, and Liechtenstein will not recognize them. Our commitment is to the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity remain steadfast. Ensuring effective and credible accountability for the crimes committed by the Russian Federation is a top priority for Liechtenstein. Accountability and justice are important preconditions for lasting peace and the recovery of the Ukrainian society. It is more urgent than ever to hold those responsible for the crime of aggression to account. The agreement between the Council of Europe and Ukraine on the Special Tribunal on the crime of aggression against Ukraine is an important first step in this respect. Excellencies, Liechtenstein has always shown its solidarity with the people of Ukraine responding to the dire impact of the war on civilians. We are committed to make an active contribution to the recovery of Ukraine. In November 2024, the Liechtenstein Parliament approved a dedicated budget line for the years 2025 to 2029 to finance reconstruction projects. Liechtenstein is focusing its efforts on Ukraine's recovery in 4 key areas: humanitarian designing, reconstruction in the education sector, human rights and good governance with a strong focus on combating corruption, economic development. The total per capita contribution amounts to 200 Swiss francs. Let me emphasize that this multi-annual budget is in addition to our existing humanitarian development budget. Supporting Ukraine does not mean reducing our support for other countries in the global south. This additional budget line for reconstruction projects reflects the commitment of the Liechtenstein Parliament to support Ukraine in its fight against the Russian aggression. Let us build this on the momentum of this summit and send a strong message of unity and support to Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Ms. Maja Rieniker, President of the Swiss National Council, who will be followed by Mr. Andrea Caroni. Please, Madam President, the floor is yours.
Mr. Speaker Norlén, Mr. Chairman Stefanchuk, Excellencies. First, I thank you for the excellent organization of this important summit and for the valuable contributions. As President of the National Council of Switzerland, I had the opportunity this year to visit Ukraine, Sweden, Finland, and other European countries. Such encounters are more than symbolic gestures. They are essential to better understand how Russia's war against Ukraine has affected the European security across our continent. In Ukraine, in July, I met people whose daily lives are marked by hardship, but I was deeply impressed by their extraordinary resilience. Here in Sweden, I witnessed how Russia's aggression on Ukraine and the changed security landscape in Europe have led to a profound shift in national priorities. More than 11 years have passed since Russia's illegal annexion of Crimea. For almost 4 years now, Russia has been attacking the whole of Ukraine in blatant violation of international law. Switzerland has consistently expressed its position. We call on Russia to fully respect international law and to recognize and respect Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. It goes without saying that the comprehensive, just and lasting peace in Ukraine must be based on the UN chapter, and there will be no peace in Ukraine without Ukraine at the negotiation table. Switzerland is happy to provide its good offices. Please allow me to raise another topic that is dear to me. And let me say this not only as a political, but also as a mother. I'm deeply moved by the fate of the Ukrainian children who have been unlawfully deported by Russia. These children were taken from their homes, from their families, and their communities. The abduction of children is not only a grave injustice, it is crime against the future of a nation. I want to underline that the Swiss National Council has adopted a motion calling for our country to join the international coalition for the return of the Ukrainian children. My dear colleagues, the people of Ukraine are paying a heavy price for defending principles that matter to all of us. As parliamentarians, it is our responsibility to remain engaged through our interactions, through our parliamentary work, and by shaping the policies of our respective countries, we can give concrete expression to our solidarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you very much. The floor now goes to Ms. Andreas Carnoni, President of the Swiss Council of State. After his remark, Mr. Theodoros Rousopoulos will give his intervention. Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues, we cannot choose our neighbors, neither as individuals nor as countries. And Switzerland has been fortunate in this regard, and so have I personally, because by coincidence, my neighbor at home in Switzerland is a Swiss entrepreneur whose company builds prefabricated wooden houses in Ukraine. And these are real, tangible homes for families who've lost their own. More than 100 are already standing, and Ukrainian craftsmen trained in Switzerland are continuing this work locally. And seeing new walls rise while the threat of drones and missiles still hangs in the air is a reminder of how courage and reconstruction go hand in hand. This is one of many initiatives that symbolize what Switzerland is doing in Ukraine. Private sector involvement for us is a key instrument. Even during war, rebuilding lives is possible and necessary. And it is a fil rouge of Switzerland's engagement, strengthening Ukraine's resilience today while supporting recovery and the pursuit of peace. And our commitment is continuous, and words are followed by action. Switzerland will provide 1.5 billion euros between 25 and 27, and a total of over 5 billion until 36, supporting reconstruction, humanitarian assistance, and efforts such as demining. A central pillar of our engagement, as I've mentioned, is the mobilization of the private sector, and this commitment brings innovation, it brings expertise, it brings quality and employment, and it strengthens Ukraine's economic resilience. If I may highlight another concrete contribution, in 2023 a large-scale school recovery initiative was launched. More than 90 school shelters now allow around 17,000 school children to continue their education in safety, and for them a protected classroom means continuity, protection and hope. Switzerland will continue to be active in this area and has decided to join the International Civil Protection Shelter Coalition initiated by Finland and Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, our responsibility begins with the present, with a war that continues to destroy lives, but responsibility also looks ahead to just peace, to lasting recovery, a future grounded in people's security and resilience. And Switzerland will stand with Ukraine, just as all of us will stand with Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now I invite Mr. Theodoros Rousopoulos, President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. His intervention will be followed by 2 video messages.
Often people ask me, what are you doing at the Council of Europe? And I say, we are there for human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. But then again, I use actually one only word. I am there, and we are there to preserve dignity. Dear guests, dear colleagues, a few days ago, President Zelensky spoke of the hardest dilemma, the choice between preserving dignity and risking the loss of a powerful ally. This is not only a Ukrainian's dilemma, it is our common question, what is dignified? And let me go back to history, 25 centuries ago. Some weeks ago I was here in Stockholm and I said the same story, which I'm going to repeat today. It was a dialogue between the Athenians and the Melians, people who were living in the island of Milos. The Athenians wanted to conquer Milos, and the Melians said, but this is injustice. Why? And the Athenians replied, just because we are more powerful than you. And this is a very relevant issue of what we're doing today. Although the island fell, their answer became a moral compass across centuries. Ukraine, dear colleagues, today do not stand alone. It is not isolated, but surrounded by nations that recognize that dignity is not a poetic ornament. It is the core of the international order. It is what tells us that borders cannot be erased and that people cannot be uprooted. Some may say it is easy for you, dear Theodoros, it is easy for us being thousands of kilometers away from Ukraine to speak like this and talk and invoke dignity, while an entire nation suffers the daily reality of war. But that is exactly why we must continue supporting Ukraine, and that is exactly why we must persuade the Americans, the American friends, that Russia will not stop even if it gets what it wants today, as Russia didn't stop when she got Crimea. It will not end with the rest Ukrainian territories seized through aggression. The Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, dear colleagues, which I have the honor to lead, was the first international body to exclude the Russians. It was the first international body to propose an international tribunal. And last year, while I was talking to this forum, I said that many laughed at us. And now, President Zelensky came to Strasbourg and he signed the treaty, and a lot of states, and I want to thank all of them who had supported this initiative of the Council of Europe, had already signed for the International Tribunal. We were the first to launch the registry of damage, and it was something that nobody believed. Now we have already 160,000 document claims. When we began the effort to return the abducted children, nobody could imagine that today we would have already 1,600 children already home. Much remains to be done, dear colleagues, but the essential point is this. We must not allow the provocation made by an authoritarian leader to pass as if nothing has happened. Because if that happens, it will not be only Ukrainians facing the dilemma of dignity, it will be the entire thinking, civilized world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now we will hear a message from Ms. Raymond Hannier, Speaker of Canadian Senate, followed by a message from Mr. Fukushiro Nukaha, Speaker of Japan's House of Representatives. Ms. Tuli Akson will speak following the video statements.
Dear Chairman Stefanchuk and Speaker Norlén, esteemed parliamentarians, colleagues and friends, en tant que président du Sénat du Canada, j'ai l'honneur
As President of the Canadian Senate, I have the honor to talk to you at the this fourth International Parliamentarian Summit for Crimea.
In person, I trust that the message from the Parliament of Canada will reaffirm our commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty, democracy, and the rule of law. We have witnessed extraordinary courage, determination, and heroism from the Ukrainian people and leaders as they confront Russia's unprovoked and unjustified attacks on Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty. Canada unequivocally condemns Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea in 2014, as well as its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. I agree with our colleagues, the chairman of the Verkhovna, Rada of Ukraine, and the speaker of the Riksdag of the Kingdom of Sweden that, and I quote, any just and lasting peace must begin with the deoccupation of Crimea, end of quote. Along with the Speaker of the House of Commons, I had the honor of welcoming Chairman Stefanchuk to Canada last September, when we met on the margins of the meeting of the speakers of the lower houses of the G7 in Ottawa. During our conversations, he noted the efforts of Canada's Parliament to raise awareness of the terrible effects of Russia's illegal war on Ukraine. Among these efforts was a motion adopted by the Senate of Canada in June 2025, condemning, and I quote, all Russian attacks on and interference in the lives of Ukrainian children, end of quote. The motion urged the state participants of the International Coalition for the Return of Ukrainian Children to substantially increase their efforts to return, repatriate and rehabilitate Ukrainian children who have been stolen by Russia. This motion builds upon the existing bicameral and all-party demonstrations of support for Ukraine in Canada's Parliament. In February 2022, Canada's Senate and House of Commons both passed motions that condemned Russia's illegal actions and called for support for the people of Ukraine. In recognition of the strong cultural ties between Ukraine and Canada, our Parliament is working towards establishing September as Ukrainian Heritage Month, honoring the more than 1.3 million members of the Ukrainian diaspora in Canada and celebrating the beauty of Ukraine's culture and heritage. Through legislation, enhanced trade, military aid, and funding, Canada continues to demonstrate its steadfast support for Ukraine. To the people of Ukraine, the members of Ukraine's parliament, the Verkhovna Rada, and Ukrainian civil society, the people of Canada and the Parliament of Canada stand with you and will support you until victory is secured for democracy, rule of law, and Ukraine. Le Canada est avec l'Ukraine, et je vous remercie. Thank you.
Canada stands with Ukraine, and I thank you.
日本国衆議院議長の額賀福志郎であります。今回の会議を主催してくださったステファンチューク議長、ノレン議長に対し心から感謝を申し上げたいと思います。今もなお、ロシアの攻撃により町が破壊され、人々の命が失われ続ける中で、祖国を守り、自由と民主主義を守るために戦い続けるウクライナの皆様方に、日本と日本国民は心からの連帯の意を表します。我が国はクリミアを含むウクライナの主権と領土一体性を一貫して支持しています。力による一方的な現状の変更はいかなる地域においても決して許されません。また、ウクライナでの戦争の終わり方によって誤った教訓が導き出されることはあってはなりません。ロシアによるウクライナ侵略はインド太平洋を含む世界の安全保障に関わる問題でもあるのです。こうした動きを阻止するため、価値観を同じくする国々が連帯をしていくことが重要であります。我が国はロシアに対し、より厳しい制裁措置を実施するとともに、ウクライナ支援のため人道的な観点からこれまでに総額120億ドル以上の支援を表明いたしました。特に地雷対策の分野においては、地雷を掘り起こして爆破処理する大型地雷除去機の供与や、地雷除去にあたるウクライナ政府職員の研修を実施するなどの支援を行ってまいりました。また、今年10月には、東京でウクライナの地雷対策を推進する国際会議を開催し、合わせて75の国と国際機関が参加をいたしました。日本は常にウクライナと共にあります。国際社会による平和への取り組みが進められる中、一日も早くウクライナに公正かつ永続的な平和がもたらされるよう、我々は議会の立場からもしっかりと今後も全力で支えてまいりたいと思います。ありがとうございました。
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Tulia Axon, President of Interparliamentary Union. Her intervention will be followed by Mr. Lars Cherson Bresk. Please, Ms. Axon, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, it is a great honor to take the floor and address you today on behalf of the Interparliamentary Union, the global organization of the national parliaments. I am grateful to the parliaments of Ukraine and Sweden for their kind invitation to this event. Today, Europe is facing a period of tension unseen in decades. The war in Ukraine has torn apart communities, cost countless lives, and forced millions from their homes. It has shaken to the core the very order that had preserved peace in Europe since the end of the Cold War. The IPU has spoken clearly and without hesitation on this matter. From the outset, the IPU has condemned Russia's military aggression against Ukraine, as well as the unlawful annexation of its territories. We commend the people of Ukraine for their courage and resilience in the face of adversity and military aggression. And we are proud to have conferred upon the Rada the first edition of the IPU Crimea Prize in recognition of its extraordinary commitment to ensuring the continuity of vital legislative activity during the very difficult conditions of war. In its resolutions and multiple pronouncements, the IPU has strongly reaffirmed the principles at the heart of international law: sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the prohibition of the use and threat of force to resolve disputes. These are the pillars of a system designated to protect us all. And when these pillars are flaunted and ignored, international relations become unstable, unpredictable, and dangerous. Dear friends, for over 135 years, the IPU has worked for peace through multilateralism and parliamentary diplomacy. The IPU itself was founded on the belief that lasting peace begins when representatives of nations, friends and foes, meet, listen, and try to find solutions when words are exchanged. We strongly believe that parliaments can build bridges and identify pathways to peace, even when governments cannot, and that dialogue must never be abandoned, even in the darkest of times. Most recently, at the IPU's 151st IPU Assembly last month, our members adopted the Geneva Declaration on upholding humanitarian norms and supporting humanitarian action in times of crisis. The declaration reaffirms the duty of all states to respect and ensure respect for international humanitarian law, to protect civilians in armed conflict, and to guarantee unimpeded humanitarian access. And in this declaration, the IPU member parliaments stressed that defending humanitarian norms is not an act of charity, but an obligation rooted in law and justice. The IPU Task Force on the Peaceful Resolution of the War in Ukraine, established in the spring of 2022, has taken this principle to heart. It has opened parliamentary discussions with both Ukraine and the Russian Federation on nuclear safety, food safety, environmental harm, the treatment of prisoners, and the tragic fate of displaced and abducted Ukrainian children. These exchanges are modest steps, but they keep the path to dialogue open and lay the groundwork for peace tomorrow, a just and a lasting peace, anchored on the fundamental principles of international law. Dear colleagues, I would like to end by giving you a brief reflection. Peace is more than the end of violence. It is not achieved simply when guns fall silent. True peace demands a foundation built on human security, on societies where every individual can live in dignity, free from fear and injustice, on communities that give each person a chance to thrive. Lasting peace also rests on a simple truth. No nation can be secure in isolation. The well-being of one depends on the well-being of all. That is why common security is another concept we have embraced, based on the notion that security of one country does not come at the expense of the other. This approach was, in fact, enshrined in our work decades ago. when the East-West parliamentary dialogue carried out at the IPU led to a formal process on security and cooperation in Europe. I thank the parliaments of Ukraine and Sweden for convening us all here today and for their leadership in defending the cause of peace and justice. I thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Lars Christian Brask, Deputy Speaker of Denmark's Folketing. You have 3 minutes. Afterwards, we will hear from Mr. Robert Zille.
Dear Speaker Norlén, dear Speaker Stefanchuk, and dear colleagues. It's a privilege to stand here today with you all. I was here in the Riksdag just a few weeks ago for the Nordic Council session, and I'm honored to be back again to stand amongst Ukrainian allies. It's a tragedy that we must be here in beautiful Stockholm on the background of war, human suffering, and with a new and incomprehensible peace proposal from the US. Nordic and European security depends on Ukraine's freedom. When one of us is threatened, all of us are threatened. This is why our unity is fundamental. I grew up in a time of optimism. Freedom, democracy, and peace shaped my youth. I believed that the fall of the Berlin Wall ended an era of oppression. I believed that freedom and democracy had won once and for all. Yet freedom is never guaranteed, and recent years have shown that it can never be taken for granted. Today, freedom is once again under attack. Russia under Putin does not only seek to occupy land. Putin's Russia seeks to create chaos and to destroy the very idea that free nations can choose their own path. This is why the Crimea Platform is so vital. It reminds the world that the occupation of Ukraine did not begin in 2022, it began a decade ago. This summit reinforces a principle that lies at the heart of European security. Borders cannot be changed by force, period. Last month, I visited Mykolaiv together with the Presidium of the Danish Parliament, and Mykolaiv is located only 20 kilometers from the front line and is under daily attack from Russia. It was a powerful experience, meeting the brave and dedicated people who fight, rebuild, and keep hope alive during bombardment and the resulting destruction. Their courage and determination remind us of what true resilience looks like. Our partnership with the city and region of Mykolaiv has been a cornerstone of Denmark's civilian assistance. Denmark has stood with Ukraine from the very beginning, and since Russia's full-scale invasion, Denmark has provided around 9.4 billion euros in military support and around 927 million in civilian contribution. And let me make it clear, this support will continue. Our commitment to Ukraine's freedom is unwavering. Ukraine is not only fighting for its survival, it's fighting for the future of Europe and for the future of freedom itself. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Robert Zille, Vice President of the European Parliament. After his intervention, we will adjourn for 30 minutes coffee break. Please, Mr. Zille, you have the floor.
Thank you, President, and distinguished speakers, President's guests. It's an honor for me to represent here European Parliament and its President Roberto Metsola at this crucial parliamentary summit of International Crimea Platform. And I would like to particularly thank Speaker of Riksdag Andreas Norlén and Chairman of Verkhovna Rada Ruslan Stefanchuk for welcoming all us today. The fourth summit here in Stockholm reminds us that the issue of Crimea, Ukraine remains central to international peace and justice. This act remains a blatant violation of international law, the UN Charter, and Ukraine's territorial integrity. An important milestone was reached by the Crimea Platform in September this year. On behalf of the European Parliament, I warmly welcome the adoption of New York Declaration at the fifth summit of International Crimea Platform on the margins of a United Nations General Assembly. When speaking about Crimea and Ukraine, it's also crucial to remember that it's not only about geopolitics or territorial borders. It's also about people. It's also about hundreds of Crimean political prisoners. It's about thousands of Ukrainian war prisoners and thousands of children and civilians forcibly brought to Russia. Dear colleagues, we must ensure predictable and stable financing for Ukraine, further to our billions euros to grants and loans that you has provided so far. I hope that you member states will swiftly find the solutions, taking into consideration also the proposed Ukraine reparation loan linked to immobilized Russian assets. The European Parliament also remains fully committed to Ukraine-EU accession path. The European Parliament supports and urges the opening of the fundamentals cluster to advance the accession negotiations. Dear colleagues, last week brought to Ukraine and also for all of us extremely challenging moment. I will quote a sentence what President Zelensky said to his citizens a few days ago. We will do and we must do everything to end the war, but not to end Ukraine, and not to end Europe, and not to end the global peace. End of the quote. You cannot create a peace if agreement is based on violation of international rules, if you destroy architecture of the world is based on rules, rights of people and nations. Coming back to the purpose of our meeting today, I want to urge our colleagues here to keep Crimea firmly on your agenda. It's not just a topic of discussions, but also as continuing priority for actions. Thank you. Krim, say Ukraina, Ukraina, say Europa. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, we will now take a 30-minute break. Coffee will be served in the Grand Gallery, located just outside this meeting room, where we had dinner last night. We reconvene at 11:30, and in Sweden, 11:30 means 11:30. I wish you all a very nice break.